Today I want to tell you all about one of my absolute favorite characters in Arknights, someone who definitely makes it to my top 5. Don't forget to turn on captions for an easier read. It looks like Demetri Certaldo is finally going to be playable in Arknights, in a new teaser in CN, a whole 4 years after his first appearance. We've been starving, which is why his name is such a hot topic now. In this video I'll be doing a quick recap/summary on his lore for anyone who's interested in getting to know him. Huge shout out to whoever that wrote up the Demetri Certaldo summary page on the Arknights Terra wiki for doing a lot of my job for me. The wiki has a summary of his involvement in Il Siracusano, which I'll talk about and maybe analyze in more detail. It's safe to say that his personality and views change quite a lot over the course of 2 huge events, so I'll run through his involvements chronologically. I'll start off with the brief context on Siracusa and how it's doing, starting with the state it's in during Il Siracusano. Il Siracusano takes place in Siracusa, a confederation of 22 city-states. Most of its citizens are primarily Vulpo and Lupo. Siracusa has a tradition of having mafia families, which can be traced back to its founding. These mafia families, also referred to as famiglia, have persisted through the years, and modern-day Siracusa is under the effective control of 12 famiglia, under the leadership of the Capo dei Capi. 60 years ago, in the year 1039, the current head of state, Signora Cecilia, unified the famiglia to end the feuds and chaos that occurred after Siracusa's independence, instantiating a legal system called the Pistoli Ordine, guns, and order. This order meant that all families had to share their powers with each other equally, with 3 prominent families, the Velluti, the Rosati, and the Solazzos leading the system. Yet, behind the outward illusion of peace in Siracusa, lies political maneuvering, conspiracies, and scheming between famiglia. With such a background, naturally, every famiglia wishes to be the sole famiglia in the country, leading to constant infighting. Of course, this detrimentally impacts Siracusa's citizens. The common citizens are often thrown back and forth in mafia conflicts, occasionally becoming collateral damage as famigli clash publicly. Currently, 3 prominent families, the Velluti, the Rosati, and the Solazzos lead the system. And yes, the Solazzos is also where Lapland hails from. We'll be talking about the Bellone famiglia a lot here. Led by Bernardo Bellone, whose son is Leontuzzo Bellone, also known to us as Vigil. Bernardo can be a manipulative leader, but he's led the Bellone family well over his tenure. Unknown to others, he privately has a goal to unify all the mafias and end the mafia tradition in Siracusa, having realized that the country can be run even without the involvement of the mafia. Additionally, one more thing that will become relevant later, you might know about Zorro, the boss of Il Siracusano, with one of the sickest themes known to Arknights. But here's a little bit of context to him that'll be relevant later. Zorro, along with other Il Signori, play a game that they refer to as the Great Game, which is essentially a battle royale where they hunt each other. However, as beast lords, they are immortal and therefore resort to using their proxies to determine a winner, people that they refer to as fangs. So first, let's start off with a little bit of Demetri's background. Unfortunately, not much is known about Demetri's early life. We just know that he's a red-headed lupo, who at the start of the Siracusa arc, acts as the consigliere of the Bellone family. It's an Italian term that directly translates to advisor. He's occasionally tasked to carry out missions on behalf of the family, including assassinations. During his time with the Bellone family, Demetri grew close to the son of the family, Leontuzzo Bellone, known to us as Operator Vigil after he joined us in the aftermath of Il Siracusano. Demetri is quite personally dedicated to him. In the operator records you'll see, perfectly willing to carry out his orders as the future head of Famiglia Bellone. In addition, Demetri is, at the start, shown to be quite supportive of the mafia and their ideals, thinking that the wolves should have to fight and struggle a little instead of having everything handed to them on a silver platter. As the advisor to the Bellone Famiglia, he's willing to do anything and everything to ensure their ultimate success. Now let's get into a bit of his story with the help of Vigil's module stories. This module story takes place before the events of Il Siracusano, where Leon uses his own methods to deal with family issues. Demetri's attentiveness and ease at answering Leon's requests shows his unwavering loyalty to Leon, and yet not the sort to just blindly take orders. He doesn't hesitate to ask Leon to elaborate on his plans or reasoning for his choices. In Vigil's second operator record, Vigil as the young heir to the Bellone Famiglia investigates a typical case of mafia unfairness, with a man from the Famiglia getting away with no punishment from the courts due to him covering his track and having Famiglia connections. Displeased with this outcome, Leon investigates the situation himself. Demetri shows a more playful side of his personality here when teasing Leon's determination to keep pressing. Additionally, while Demetri has his own view about how the mafia should operate, he's not one to tell Leon what he should not do or what to choose. Though this may partly be due to their dynamic as young master and advisor, I'd believe it's also more due to Demetri admiring Leon's spirit and his determination to his ideals, willing to follow whatever Leon chooses. With all that covered, let's move on to his first debut event, Il Siracusano. I won't go into much detail about the full event story because it's really long, but I do highly recommend reading it because it's also one of my favorite ones. I've tried to include enough context if not, though. His record in Azione Solo here shows his views towards the Bellone Famiglia. He supports them wholeheartedly and wishes to see them become the masters of Siracusa, overthrowing even the other famigli to do so. Demetri is first mentioned as Lavinia, penance, attempts to investigate strange circumstances of murder and, where his dislike of her is quite clearly expressed in his more dismissive or sarcastic tone. When she probes further, he notes that committing murder on Bellone ground, in Volsinii, is akin to spitting in their faces and disrespecting them. For context, the mafia in Siracusa are free to do almost anything, short of actually killing each other, and having a murder victim blatantly discoverable is an obvious overlooking of the rules. He insinuates that the perpetrators are likely Colombian famigli who have no respect for those rules. Slightly later on, he's shown speaking to Capone and Gambino, hiring them privately, not ordered by Bernardo Bellone, to assassinate Rubio, which they attempt while Rubio is out in public with Leontuzzo. For a bit of context, Rubio is an NPC, a judge who detests the current system that is controlled heavily by the famigli and wishing to one day have a change to the status quo. These views do directly go against Demetri's, who thinks that the control of the famigli should be absolute. Demetri's attempted assassination fails, due to Texas acting as bodyguard and foiling their plans. Rubio survives, though another minister is killed in a simultaneously timed attack. Leon is injured during the fight and Lavinia brings him back to the Bellone mansion. Demetri is immediately taking care of Leon the moment he wakes up, peeling an apple for him as they discuss who could have possibly been behind the attack. Demetri, in his playful or defiant sort of way, expresses his dissatisfaction at what happened to Texas, who was originally called back to Siracusa to serve as Leon's bodyguard, but then arrested by Lavinia after being suspected of having involvement in the assassinations due to being at the scene of the crime. Demetri presses his concerns, which is the concern that other famigli will see Famiglia Bellone as weak now after the events that just unfolded, and that he believes the new Volsinii district should be under Bellone control completely, which means that they'll have to fight to regain their advantage. Here, Leon mentions that he has his own plans as well, to which Demetri asks to hear them, and Leon eventually acquiesces saying that Demetri is his trusted advisor after all. Showing his deep trust in Demetri, despite the fact that Leon suspects that it isn't one of the main famigli that attacked him, stating that the hitman knew him too well, suspecting that it was an inside job from someone in the Bellone famigli. As such, Leon's plan is to lay low for a while until the real culprit revealed themselves. To which Demetri agrees to help Leon with his plan, acknowledging that he is the boss here. Demetri is next seen arranging an assassination on Lavinia. He isn't completely cold-hearted either, when his associates express some regret at assassinating her and saying that she's a friend to their famiglia, he claims that he doesn't want to be the villain either, and only does so because she befriended Leon, the next Don of Famiglia Bellone. However, he fails when Texas shows up and protects Lavinia, instead resolving to retreat, and that he's hopefully pushed the message enough, as his only goal is to snuff out Leon's childishness. Later in the story, Demetri reveals his plan to the reader, stating that his goal was to provoke Signore Cecilia, their head of state. In one of the more monumental moments of Il Siracusano, Leon confronts Demetri in their home, the Bellone family mansion. After he reveals he knows that Demetri is the one behind all the chaos in the city recently, Demetri scoffs that Lavinia has influenced Leon a great deal, making him question his decisions more. He shows clear disdain towards Lavinia, saying that he won't allow her to believe that she's capable of doing something, meaning, influencing the Bellone family and how Siracusa works. While they discuss how Leon figured out that the person behind it all was from a famiglia and eventually pointed to Demetri being the culprit, Leon asks him exactly why he has gone to such lengths and done all this. Demetri jokes that it's obviously because he's the traitor of the famiglia, to which Leon immediately disagrees. He says that he'd be more willing to believe that everyone else was a traitor before Demetri, adding that if he can't trust Demetri, then who can he trust? Demetri yields easily enough, asking Leon about his views on the new city, before expressing his own. He knows that yes, the Bellone famiglia will likely get absolute control over the new nomadic city, Nuova Valsinii, but thinks it would not achieve anything, as the famiglia are allowed to do everything just short of killing each other, resulting in their current struggle for power. Demetri summarizes that he thinks the current head of state, Signora Cecilia, is making the famiglia weaker by not allowing them to fight each other by her ironclad laws, and that his plan, the plan of Bernardo Bellone, is to have their famiglia rule over all of Siracusa. Leon questions what Demetri's backup plan is, knowing that Demetri would have some other way of succeeding, and Demetri confesses that the reason why he came to Leon was because he felt that he owed him an apology in the end, as his closest friend and his soldier, claiming that he also didn't sleep well having to betray him like this. Despite all that, Demetri is still unwilling to back down, later bringing Leon to meet the boss, Bernardo Bellone, his own father, for the two of them to have a bit of a heart-to-heart. At this point, Bernardo reveals his affiliation with Signore Dei Lupi, Zorro, that he is the Fang of Zorro. Leon struggles to come to terms with this fact, concerned that Bernardo was merely being a puppet in Zorro's quest to win the hunt, but concedes that his father is certainly strong-willed and not merely being a puppet for Zorro's purposes. Bernardo says that he and Zorro are simply being each other's tools for mutual victory. For Bernardo, this means ruling the entire Siracusa, and for Zorro, to win the great game. Demetri's next appearance after letting Bernardo and Leon have their heart-to-heart is when Lavinia shows up at the Bellone family mansion again, asking to see Bernardo, where Demetri coldly tells her that he's over at the Saluzzo family mansion after Alberto Saluzzo, the head of the Saluzzo family, sends an invite for Leon to attend their banquet. Before she leaves, he tells her pointedly that Leon may have deviated from the path, but in the end they are still a famiglia and that a famiglia ought to stick together. Adding a little bit of context, during this celebration, Leon and Bernardo talk to Alberto Saluzzo, who says he's willing to support Bernardo on his quest to overthrow Signora Cecilia. Subtly hinting at assassinating the head of the Rossetti family, Giovanna Rossetti, at the Opera House the next day, the two come to a consensus to join forces and take her out the next day. Demetri shows up here during the actual assassination as a participant, challenging one of Giovanna's high-ranking family members, an Elafia called Wallach, who stands in his way. Wallach defeats Demetri in combat, asking him for any last words, to which Demetri responds that he doesn't have any, other than to tell Leon Tuzzo that he's sorry. But shortly after, Leon rushes in, stopping him from killing Demetri and trying his best to stop the war and the assassination of Giovanna Rossetti by offering Wallach a bet, likely to see if Texas succeeded in carrying out the assassination of Giovanna. Wallach agrees, and Leon quickly drags an injured Demetri out of the theater. Leon does admit that his original plan wasn't to win over Wallach, but that it was the best idea given the circumstances. Demetri notes that Leon still hasn't given up on his ideals, of having a Siracusa with no Famiglia influences. Demetri asserts that Leon's going to do great things, and Leon immediately says that Demetri will be his right-hand man when that happens. Demetri waves it off, saying that he doesn't get along with Lavinia, who Leon would have to work with to fulfill his dream. But Leon insists on having him by his side, saying that there'd be things better left to her and others better left to Demetri. Leon finishes his thoughts by saying that he doesn't agree with what Demetri and his father are working on, but that in the end he is still a member of the Bellone Famiglia. Later on, the newly appointed Minister of Public Works of Volsinii, who attempted to work with the Bellone family, took his life on the live broadcast for his inauguration, making a point to stand against the Famiglia-controlled justice system and bringing Volsinii a step in a new direction. Following this, Demetri frantically attempts to wake up Leon, who's been dreaming about a past moment with his father, when his father first started questioning the need for the Famiglia in Siracusa. Leon comes to the realization of what his father intends to do and immediately confides in Demetri. Though Demetri is understandably shocked and at first, disbelieving, that this was the Don's plan all along, but he knows the severity of the situation and reminds Leon that he said that he'd do things his way, and no matter what the current situation was, that Leon was now the boss of the Famiglia without the Don around. Leon acknowledges this, and gives orders for Demetri to inform the Solazzos that he wanted to meet with Alberto and to get in touch with Wallach. At the arranged meeting with Alberto Solazzo, Alberto attempts to send a hitman on Leon, but the hitman, influenced by Rubio's suicide speech, turns his weapon on Alberto. Unfortunately, Alberto kills him first, and sets an ultimatum for Leon, for the Bellone Famiglia to submit to the Solazzo Famiglia, or die here and now. Leon thinks back on his experiences, with the Famiglia, with the people who died to try and make a difference, and recognizes that what he's done before was simply violence pretending to not be violence. Before Alberto can finish his countdown, however, they receive news that the core city is moving, and Leon realizes that it's his father pulling the strings. Leon attempts to fight his way out, and as Alberto counters, Wallach and Demetri jump in to protect him. Demetri tells Leon to go on and finish his business, while he and Wallach hold Alberto back. Alberto manages to get away, and Wallach and Demetri talk briefly afterwards. Demetri admits that Alberto could have easily killed them both if he'd wanted it done, but chose to run instead. Here, Wallach attempts to fight him, but Demetri ignores him in favor of asking for a situation update, and finds out that chaos is breaking out over the whole of Siracusa. Though feeling betrayed by Leon's actions, Demetri takes charge and suggests that he and Wallach should work together at the moment, presenting the truth that Wallach cannot swallow the whole of Siracusa on behalf of the Rossati's at the moment even though he definitely wishes to. He expresses his own dislike for having to work together with Wallach, but knows that it's the best choice at the moment. He asks about Leon, to which the mafiosi respond that they haven't seen a trace of him. Demetri realizes that he and his father likely have a plan in mind, but he decides to focus on the reality that is currently unfolding in front of him and attempts to salvage the situation. He orders the Bellone mafiosi to assault the secondary core area, as their best bet to derive a future. In the meantime, Leon finally tracks down his father and talks to him, about how he came to share the same views as Lavinia on the ways of the mafiosi needing to be exterminated from Siracusa. Leon then sets him straight with a cold, hard truth, that Bernardo's choice may be able to bring about a Siracusa with no famiglia for a little while, but with the people not knowing what to do or where to go without the famiglia, it will not bring about the future that they wished for. He proposes the alternative of allowing the people to know what's happening and involve them in the process, as a step to progressing towards a Siracusa with no famiglia. Leon lays out his plans, saying that he'll control the new city and negotiate with Signora Cecilia to put that into action, but also notes that they'll be betraying Demetri and their entire famiglia with such a move. But despite that, his convictions are strong, and he leaves his father in the church to carry out his plans. Soon, Zoro appears to Bernardo, demanding to know what he's doing, and Bernardo defiantly tells him, in short terms, that he has lost this round of the game and that his idea of real power is far from the actual true thing. Unhappy with his betrayal, Zoro attempts to control him, but then notices that Bernardo ingested poison earlier, intending to fully ensure that Zoro would not have a hold over him any longer. Back to Demetri and Wallach, who are now racing against the team of Lavinia, Exage, and Texas to try and get into the core area. Demetri and Wallach realize that they're being delayed on purpose. Wallach attempts to converse, calling them brothers in misfortune, though Demetri vehemently denies it, showing a rather clear dislike for him. Here, Wallach questions Demetri, saying that if his boss is the one who set the whole plan in motion, Demetri would likely find himself standing on the opposite side of his brothers, and Leon, then asking him if he's prepared to do what he has to do. Demetri doesn't answer the question, instead counter-questioning if Wallach has found what he's looking for, which Wallach answers that he hasn't, but there's nothing that he can do about it. Interrupting this briefly to include one of my favorite quotes, from Lavinia and Exage's POV in the core city, Leon catches up to Lavinia, as a flamboyantly dressed mob boss. But before Leon can tell Lavinia about his realizations and decisions, Demetri also arrives in the core area. Demetri demands to know where Leon's been ever since leaving the meeting with Alberto, and Leon answers that he went looking for his father. Through Demetri's shock, Leon continues that he's been wrong his entire life, with his approach on reforming Siracusa and his use of violence in the process. Making a choice, Leon walks over to stand on Lavinia's side of the avenue, standing against Demetri and renouncing his position as Don Bellone, the leader of the Bellone Famiglia. Pained, though unsurprised by this betrayal and final choice, Demetri lets loose a rant, that both Bernardo and Leon, though having grand ideals, eventually chose to abandon their famiglia. He demands to know if everything that they've gone through together, growing up and fighting together, meant nothing to Leon. I also think it's pretty notable that in the end, despite all that Leon did against him, Demetri never once protested against the ideals that Leon was fighting for, and at this climax of the story he was still more focused on the fact that Leon, and Bernardo, had abandoned them, rather than actually being against the removal of the famiglia from Siracusa. This is a recurring theme that'll also be mentioned in the next story. Despite Demetri's outburst, Leon remains resolute in his views, saying that in the end, he'll have to stand against all famiglia, and that he'd rather not drag out the suffering. Who knows what would have happened after this? Would Demetri have attempted something more drastic to keep Leon by his side? It's something that we'll never know, because now the rat, I mean the wolf, crawls out of the sewers. Zoro returns, his presence causing other onlookers to pass out, leaving only Lavinia, Leon, and Demetri standing. He immediately attempts to attack them, going directly against the one and only ironclad rule of the game, that they cannot directly interfere in the affairs of mortals. Zoro announces Bernardo's suicide to everyone there, making Leon realize that that was his plan all along and his approval was his last words for him. Keeping his focus, Leon insults Signore Dei Lupi, asserting that he wouldn't understand Bernardo's sacrifice and demanding that Signore Dei Lupi pay the final price. Texas arrives from her hold-up with Wallach and helps engage in combat against Zoro. Met with the news that Bernardo took his own life, both Lavinia and Demetri are given pause, Lavinia regretful that Bernardo never told her the truth, and Demetri realizing/lamenting that he didn't know Bernardo like he thought he did. Lunakab, the fang of another wolf, saves him and snaps him back to reality of the danger of the situation. The situation is only defused by the appearance of Emperor, the Penguin Beast Lord, and the other Signori Dei Lupi who have lost the round. They remind Zoro that he's lost the round, and that they will not permit the breaking of the rules, by directly meddling with mortal affairs. Realizing that he cannot fight against all of his kind, Zoro reluctantly gives in and dissipates with one last stare at Leon. A lot of final conclusions are crammed into this part of the story, that I recommend you go and briefly skim through if you're interested, such as Lapland and Texas getting out with their rivalry, Giovanna realizing that Texas was different from what she thought she knew. Additionally, Leon, Texas, Lapland, Lavinia have a meeting with Signora Cecilia, with Leon asking to start by borrowing a proposal. The moment is tense, with none of them sure about how Signora Cecilia will react, until she finally smiles mysteriously. Now, we'll move over to the Siracusa cemetery, where Leon digs the grave for his father alone. Though, typically, a funeral for a former Don would have had many attendees, many see him as someone who betrayed his famiglia and city and society, and Leon additionally requested for the others to not come. Talking to his father for perhaps the last time, Leon tells him that Signora Cecilia agreed to his request, and there would be no famiglia in the new nomadic city. He muses a bit on Signora Cecilia, which isn't relevant to Demetri, but a good explanation nevertheless that you can pause to read if you're interested. Finally completing the digging, Leon stands up to push the coffin in, struggling a little with the weight of it, but then he's joined by another pair of hands, helping him. Looking up in surprise, he sees Demetri next to him, helping him lower Bernardo into his final resting place. Once they're done, Demetri takes out a pocket watch from his coat and tosses it into the grave, returning it to its original owner. The exchange that follows between them is here, you can pause to read it in greater detail. Demetri tells him that, though he's personally forgiven Leon's actions, the Fratelli, brothers, from the Bellone famiglia that died in the conflict could never forgive him. Leon agrees that he won't forget them even if famiglia Bellone is gone. He says he's heard that Demetri plans to organize a new famiglia, which Demetri doesn't deny, saying that most of the survivors had already left, but those who stayed behind would need a place to go. Finally, Demetri adds that Leon's walking down a thorny path. Eventually, he'll be standing in his way. Finally, he tells him, "Don't go dying on me, Leon." Leon tells him to do the same, and the two part ways. For now, let's briefly go into the Azione Solo, the minigame part of Il Siracusano. I'll be very brief here since the bulk of the content has already been covered and this is just additional tidbits. We have a bit of POV from Demetri after he leaves Bernardo and Leon to talk midway through Il Siracusano. He's strongly convinced on the mafioso ideals on how the mafia should rip and tear each other apart instead of being all soft on each other as they have nowadays, while looking down on Lavinia's ideals which she's managed to instill in Leon. A little later, Bernardo asks Demetri on what he thinks about how Leon's been acting lately. Demetri's honest take is that he thinks Leon has become more indecisive and is going soft, influenced by Lavinia. He says that he personally trusts Leon to have his back, but that doesn't mean that what he's doing is okay, especially as the future Don of the Bellone famiglia. Later, managing to catch a rare break, Demetri muses that perhaps what Leon said to him wasn't that infeasible after all. He thinks that even he can envision the future Leon's been talking about, but since it's not a reality yet, still being a figment of Leon's imagination, he focuses on the work in the present, which was supposed to be Giovanna's assassination. At the end of the story, Demetri speaks to one of the newer Bellone mafiosi, with the mafiosi suggesting that they take revenge on Leon as he's moving into the new city. Demetri reels this back, saying that he wants to take revenge for Leon Tuzzo's betrayal of the famiglia, and not a violent personal vendetta. Once the mafiosi leaves, Demetri muses to himself that it has to be him, that he has to be the one to do it. Still with me? I know, Il Siracusano is one of the longer events but also one of my favorite ones, since it's got really a lot of setup and details about how the mafia works. If you're ready, let's get started with the next event, Il Portatori dei Velluti. I'll include some context, but likely skipping more of this one and focusing on Demetri/Leon, so do feel free to read up or visit the wiki if you're interested in the rest of it. Il Portatori dei Velluti opens with a focus on the Carnevale, a celebration in Siracusa. It's the one-year anniversary of Nuova Valsinii, which has currently still succeeded in not having the Famiglia. Leon talks about how the people of the city need a banner that they can rally behind. Lavinia worries about painting a target on Leon's back and making him a target for the Famiglia. Wrapping up the conversation, Leon tells Lavinia that he promised to join Demetri for dinner that night, not being able to avoid him forever, and Lavinia, though skeptical, wishes him good luck of sorts. A little later, Leon wraps up filming for his inaugural speech as acting mayor, and realizes that he's late for dinner. Driving on the way to meet Demetri, Leon gets a call from the man himself. Leon apologizes, saying that he's had a busy day, and Demetri asks if he's been busy with his inaugural speech. Leon lets a little loose, saying that they're planning a birthday party for an entire city, which is different from planning a party at home. Demetri expresses surprise that he remembers the party, and Leon reminisces on how Demetri back then bought ginger ale instead of beer for the banquet, then pocketed the difference to buy a car. With Demetri's somewhat lack of a response, Leon notes that he sounds distracted, and Demetri deflects by saying that it's been a long time since they'd last seen each other. He tells Leon to take care on his way over, which Leon jokes might be seen as a threat if they weren't in Nuova Valsinii. Hanging up, Leon thinks about how he hasn't seen Demetri for a year now, and thinks about the offer Demetri will make and how he'll decline it. Slightly disheartened at how the reunion is likely going to turn out less than pleasant, Leon keeps driving when a beam of light suddenly shines on his face. Realizing that a vehicle is headed right for him, Leon attempts to turn the wheel, then realizes his wheel has been sabotaged, the vehicle crashes into him, and the last thing Leon sees is a yellow taxi before losing consciousness. The incident leaves Leon in a coma in the hospital, and Lavinia quickly rushes to find the culprit. Naturally, she focuses on the Famiglia as the highest possibility of being the culprit. Over on one of the Famiglia's POVs, one of the heads of the Venezia Famiglia is informed that the truck that hit Leon was hauling their goods. However, it doesn't seem like the owner of the business Antonio is the culprit, as he orders his men to figure out which Famiglia made the attack on Leon. Over on the truckers' side, we find out that the truckers were being basically blackmailed into smuggling goods for mafiosi, with the trucker that hit Leon admitting that he did it because he couldn't afford oropathy medication for his sister, along with a lot of other truckers. A little while later, Demetri storms into Alberto Salazzo's premises, the Salazzos having opened a winery in Nuova Valsinii. He demands to know if Alberto was the one that instigated the car crash, to which Alberto refuses to answer and ignores Demetri's demand to tell him everything he knows. Alberto starts telling Demetri a personal story that he doesn't tell often. He spills a sob story to Demetri about his fratello he used to have, saying that he was dearly close to this fratello of his. Unfortunately, within a year of taking over the Salazzo family business, he found his dead body in the parking lot. Demetri is expressly cold towards the story Alberto is trying to tell him, simply asking if it's because he's just a cold-blooded mafioso. Alberto laughs it off, simply saying that mafiosi are not duty-bound to each other and emphasizing that the moment his fratello chose a different path, he was no longer a part of his famiglia. Demetri, obviously reading the hidden intent in his message regarding him and Leon, who's chosen a different path from their famiglia as well, demands to know what he's trying to say. Alberto only deflects, saying that he doesn't like to debate or argue with others, then suggests that Demetri should take care of things if he wants to avenge his Bellone fratello. Clearly annoyed, Demetri warns Alberto that he'll handle the matter with Leon himself, repeating what he said to his own famiglia last year, in fact, and telling him to not step over the line. Though, later with the meeting, we find out that Alberto was also not responsible for the truck driver that hit Leon. The next time Demetri shows up is at a winery, where two undercover police officers are lingering. Demetri pretends to offer them a drink, casually exposing that he's recognized them as officers, but then turns his attention to Lavinia, who's also at the bar. Naturally suspicious of him, Lavinia questions him when he mentions that he's working with, or close to the Salazos. She demands to know what he's doing working with Alberto. A little annoyed, Demetri says that he didn't come to speak with her to be interrogated, and asserts that his only reason for meeting her is to find out about Leon's condition. He's relieved that his condition isn't too bad, evidenced by Lavinia still being free enough to show up, and asks if he can meet Leon. When Lavinia coldly responds that he knows the answer to that, Demetri asserts that Leon is his fratello and he just hopes to know that he's safe and sound. Wary of him, Lavinia wonders if Leon is still a fratello to Demetri, or instead the traitor of the Bellone famiglia that he'd want revenge against. Demetri agrees that everyone who stayed in the Bellone famiglia has valid reason to hate Leon, and says that he also hates Leon and doesn't agree with his choices. But yet, he wouldn't deal with him in such an underhanded and despicable manner. Demetri challenges her and asks if she'll haul him to court and interrogate him, but Lavinia says that she won't arrest him without decisive evidence. Seeing Lavinia's determination to find out who it was that instigated Leon's accident, Demetri thanks her with reluctance, saying that he never liked her that much but still appreciates her for taking care of Leon for him. He adds that he'll also investigate Leon's accident, wanting to find out who the actual culprit was. Reminiscing or perhaps being slightly regretful, Demetri looks thoughtfully at the bottle of wine and says that he'd planned to invite Leon to try it, and that he should have been the one sitting there instead of Lavinia. He asks again if he can see Leon, but Lavinia gives no response, and Demetri reluctantly leaves with his answer. The next time we see Demetri, he's sitting with Alberto Salazzo again, where a member of the Salazzo family gives a report on their famiglia's wineries. The summary is that several of their wineries are still under audit and waiting to open, which the member accuses of being due to the city hall's attitude of distrust towards them. Alberto says that their friend will solve these problems, indicating Demetri sitting across the table. Alberto basically explains that he will transfer all Salazzo properties to Demetri, saying that whenever it involves a Bellone or a Salazzo, the government and court of Nuova Valsini tend to react in a more defensive manner, leading to Famiglia Bellone's applications not going through. Here, Alberto talks up Demetri a little, saying that he values Demetri's understanding of Leon, and even calling him the new Don Bellone. Demetri is visibly displeased by this, telling Alberto not to treat him like a puppet. Demetri asserts that his choice to work for Salazzo Vino, to get the Bell ones in the city legally, makes them only business partners, and that the Bell ones will not be at the Salazzo's beck and call despite them working together. Alberto ignores the fangs behind his words, simply saying that there's no point in acting tough. Trying to twist the knife, Alberto says that perhaps Leon doesn't even care about Demetri anymore, adding that he's already abandoned him. Demetri doesn't rise to the bait, instead turning around to ask about Alberto's daughter, Lapland. Alberto asserts that he was the one who banished Lapland, and Demetri calmly shoots back that that's probably not what Lapland thinks of the situation. Pretending to not want to engage, Alberto merely says that he won't take offense to it, and Demetri drops the topic, seeing that he's not getting anywhere. He makes sure that Alberto signs the equity documents to transfer the businesses to him, and says that he'll use the dividends from the month to get Leon to reminisce about the good old days. Demetri next shows up in the hospital that he's not allowed to be in, attempting to visit Leon while only Lavinia is around. Though Lavinia is startled, saying that he shouldn't have clearance to come in, Demetri ignores this and says that she can't prevent him from seeing Leon forever. He brings roses for Leon, saying that they used to have roses like those back at the Bellone residence. Demetri reminds her that there have been no clues to link him to the accident involving Leon, but Lavinia instead mentions the entity ownership change application from Salazzo Vino shifting their assets to Demetri, and asks why he's collaborating with Alberto. Demetri answers that he had to figure out his own way to stay in the city since it has been unwelcoming to him thus far, and emphasizes that it complies with city rules. Demetri suggests that it might be better for him to stay within her sights, saying again that he should be allowed to visit Leon on account of him being the one nursing him back to health whenever he was sick. He adds, again, that while the Bell ones won't give up trying to enter the city, there has never been any need or reason for him to hurt Leon. Though Lavinia appears somewhat sympathetic, in the end, she denies him entrance as Leon's safety is still paramount and she cannot let a potential suspect meet him. A little while later, Texas shows up with the police to arrest Alberto Salazzo, accusing Salazzo Vino of employing illegal methods to circumvent the standard background check procedure. Though the Famiglia associates move to intervene, Demetri stops them, saying that if the police are only suspecting Salazzo Vino of such crimes, then it should be easy to resolve. Alberto agrees to go with peacefully, saying that he's just doing his duty as a citizen of the city and handing the rest of the business of the winery to Demetri, the now manager of Salazzo Vino, in his absence. The next day, the day of the Carnevale, Demetri visits the hospital ward again, finding a slightly opened window and an empty bed and realizing that Leon is awake. Demetri teases him a little, but then expresses concern that Leon immediately got dressed up as soon as he woke up, indicating that he's likely going to attend the Carnevale later. Leon dismisses his concerns, saying that he's merely slightly lightheaded. Demetri protests further, insisting that the city hall has contingency plans and suggesting to delay his inauguration until he's in better shape, though his expression suggests that he knows it's not quite possible. Leon also follows up by asking if he really thinks that that's possible. Leon elaborates that Lavinia hasn't yet announced the cancellation of the speech, indicating she hopes that it can still take place. He says that if Carnevale proceeds without any problems, the worst thing to come out of his absence would simply be a few audience approvals, but if there's something more sinister lurking beneath the surface during the Carnevale, he needs to be at the scene. He continues to tell Demetri to reschedule their dinner to another day, but Demetri immediately steps in and says that their dinner would be today. Demetri steps in with his own opinions, laying down a few thinly veiled threats to suggest that Leon join him for this dinner while also offering to escort him to the scene. He says that he has some things he has to tell Leon, perhaps including his deal with Salazzo. Seeing the threats and Demetri's insistence/determination, Leon gives in, extending his hand to Demetri. He tells Demetri that he'll be counting on him, and Demetri agrees that it'll be just like old times. Walking among the Carnevale, Demetri comments that he'd never have imagined such a festival in Siracusa. He asks Leon that in his grand dreams, how many cities would be like this in Siracusa, and after a moment's pause Leon says that he hopes it would be all of Siracusa in his goals. As Leon continues to talk about his ideals and his hopes for the rest of Siracusa, Demetri sighs a little, asking how many things will he leave behind in the process. Leon doesn't say anything momentarily, and Demetri continues to talk about how Leon's the same as always, firm, unwavering, and talkative when talking about his ideals. He confirms that Leon's the one behind rejecting all applications by any businesses associated with the Bell ones. Here, Demetri explains his point of view and his thoughts. He says that he understands why Leon did it, wanting to separate himself from the past and demonstrate the purity of the city hall. He tells Leon about the associates that chose to stay together even after the incident, and to keep the Bellone name, despite the name causing them to become a target for other famiglia and giving them countless troubles. About how he and those associates don't regret the hardships, because they'd lived, fought, and bled together under that Bellone name, and not even the betrayal of the Don and his heir, Leon Tuzzo, could shake that sense of belonging to the Bellone famiglia. Demetri continues, saying that Leon and Bernardo's goals of changing the country from the foundation were admirable, but a little cruel, if there was no room in their great ambitions for the Fratelli that had their back the entire time, going through hell with them in the past. He says that the Fratelli respect Leon, but were also disappointed. Leon fills in that blank, and Demetri recognizes that Leon had known all along. He calls him cold, though his expression suggests more of acceptance, and Leon looks guilty after the fact. Demetri notes that if Nuova Valsinii has been rejecting their applications because of the mayor's links to Bellone, the problem could easily be solved by taking out said mayor, Leon. Leon notes that his men are in place nearby, and if anything, right now would be the best time for such a job. Demetri agrees that it would hardly be an inconvenience, and that he'd promised to be responsible to those left behind. Demetri follows up by saying that that's what he intended to tell Leon a few days back at the restaurant, that he had nothing to do with Leon's accident, but he wouldn't hesitate to get Leon out of the way if he became an obstacle to the Bellone Famiglia. Leon agrees that he believes him, with Demetri not being the joking type. But before either of them can continue, they're interrupted by an ominous noise, with Demetri noting an even bigger float and asking if this was a planned surprise. Long story short, Lapland hijacks a Venezia landship. Famiglia Venezia has been intending to use this Carnivale to take over the city with weapons hidden in the landship. Texas joins Lapland on the landship. A little stunned by all they've missed, Leon and Demetri stand in surprise for a while, but it's not long before Demetri encourages Leon to go on and deliver the closing speech, also his inauguration speech. Leon thanks Demetri for getting him there safely, and apologizes for not being able to give him a satisfactory answer even at the very end. Demetri waves it off, asking since when have you been the type to say useless crap like that, to which Leon agrees hesitantly. As Leon takes the stage on his inauguration speech, which is pretty inspiring, you should definitely go check it out yourself if you're interested. He mentions the following during his speech, that a friend, Demetri, once told him that he was walking down a thorny path, in reference to the ending of Il Siracusano, and apologizes for all those who have been hurt on the path and may continue to be hurt in the future. But at the same time, he continues to extend an invitation to all the friends who have something to ask of Nuova Valsinii, vowing to trample the thorns of the Famiglia and make this new era free of Famiglia possible. Watching in the background, Demetri listens to his speech somewhat awestruck. And finally, he notes that though Saluzzo's wine isn't bad, he prefers his own, and vows that Bellone will find its own way into the city, in his way, by Leon's, and their government, rules. He makes this final promise to Leon, then turns around to leave, having gotten the answer that he was looking for. He accepts the invite, or in another sense, the declaration of a very long war. In the final part of the conclusion to this story, Lapland visits her father Alberto Saluzzo in jail, hinting that his stay might be much longer than he'd originally thought. The Saluzzo Famiglia took a vote, and wished for her to take charge of the remaining Famiglia affairs for now while Alberto was currently unavailable. However, Lapland answers that Alberto had already picked his guy before going to jail, and turns to Demetri. Demetri, visibly pleased with this, accepts this responsibility, vowing to immediately audit all Saluzzo businesses and promising to restructure the leadership of Saluzzo Vino, essentially saying that he'll take over the Saluzzo Famiglia and rework from scratch. Back in the prison, Alberto is furious at this, but Lapland casually leaves him hanging, and the story closes out. Oh boy, that sure was a lot of content. If you stuck it out this long, kudos to you, you must be a huge Demetri fan. Definitely pat yourself on the back at this point. Making this summary video, though it took forever, actually made me pretty happy because Demetri's personality and views really make more sense when you link the whole two stories together. Though, at first, he's quite against the no Famiglia view that Leon and Lavinia have, thinking that the Famiglia should have to fight tooth and nail for what they have. His part in the Azione Solo shows that he's actually warming up, or at least, open to the idea of the Siracusa with no Famiglia. He does make it abundantly clear to Leon that his main issue is more with Leon abandoning the Famiglia and his fratellos during his shift, brothers who went through fire and flames with him, for the sake of his ideals. Calling himself the Abandoned, in both Il Portatori dei Velluti and also in the new event teaser in CN. And it seems like Leon's taken his words to heart. Let's see where this goes in the new event. Thank you for watching. Do leave some support if you like this kind of lore video, because they take ages, and I'll see you in the next video. Credits to my friend at Yoja Cake for this cute Deem Leon art. Go and give them a follow on Bluesky or Twitter.